Hello and welcome to another edition of the Master of Business podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mark Stevenson, Assistant Director, Community Safety, Regulated Services and Transformation, Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council. Hiya Mark, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me, Noel.
Oh, you're very welcome. And our very own Niamh Cooney, who is a Marketing Content Assistant here at the university. So welcome. Today we're going to be talking about apprenticeships. Niamh is currently on the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship. And Mark is an alumni of the Senior Leader Apprenticeship. So we're going to talk a little bit about their journeys today and also the benefits of studying apprenticeship. So welcome. Niamh, do you want to start us off? Tell us a little bit about you and your career journey so far.
Yeah, so I work in the student recruitment and marketing team as a marketing and content assistant. And I'm specifically assigned to the business school. So I help with all the recruitment activity, the marketing activity. So this is actually my third apprenticeship now.
Okay.
So I did my level 2 and level 3 business administration apprenticeship with Tees Valley Combined Authority. And then I moved into the marketing team where I got a bit of marketing experience. So all of my marketing experience up till that point was on the job, which is how I feel I learn best. I feel like I learn best by doing things. So that sort of seemed like the best route for me at that time. And then once I moved into the marketing team, I did a level 4 qualification with the Chartered Institute of Marketing. And then following that, that's when I moved to the university about 18 months ago. And now I'm doing my degree apprenticeship here.
Brilliant. And can I say, you do a fantastic job in supporting the business school as well in your work. And you're going to tell us a little bit more about your apprenticeship as we go through this podcast, aren't you? Because you're doing some really interesting stuff on it. So thanks, Niamh. Welcome. Mark, I feel like I've known you forever.
It does feel like that now. Yeah. I think the last 3 years in particular with my time with the business school is it went quickly, but obviously with all that's gone on in the world, it felt like a long time as well. But glad to be back on campus.
Well, it's good to be here. Tell us a little bit about your journey, because Mark, you've got a very, very varied career.
I do indeed, yeah. And like you said, just before the podcast, we were saying this is my first year in 10 years that I've not been a student at this university. So previously done my undergrad in law here at Teesside University and then on to the Masters, the MBA for business, and enjoyed every second of that. Born and bred in Stockton-on-Tees, born and bred in the town centre itself. So, cut me in half, I've got Stockton running through me. So it's no surprise really, at 17, just before my 18th birthday, I joined the local council, Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council. And then since then, it's really been a whirlwind of development and public service, really. Started off within the community safety team. And then since then, Noel, I've dotted around adult social care. I've had a stint in our community services around waste collection, refuse, recycling, gritting, back to community safety, and owned both of those in terms of leadership. And then in May 2022, I've got my current role as Assistant Director on the Senior Management Team at the Council.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Well deserved as well.
Thank you. And since then, gone from strength to strength, supporting the Council and more importantly, supporting our communities as well.
Super. Well, again, thanks for coming on the podcast.
No, you're welcome.
So, the apprenticeship then, let's move to that. And Niamh, if I could start with you, obviously you've got apprenticeship experience at levels 2 and 3. You joined the university. What was the sort of driver for you to start the Chartered Management Degree Apprenticeship?
So I always kind of thought, because I didn't have a degree when I got here, there is 4 other people in my team who were doing a similar sort of role to me. So we have one marketing and content assistant assigned to each academic school within the university. And they all had degrees. So I did kind of feel a little bit like I'd started off on the back foot, although I know that that's not the case. Because obviously I knew I had the experience to do the job and I knew that I was good at the job, but you do automatically feel a little bit like you are on the back foot when you're sort of working with people who have that sort of academic background. So it hadn't really been something I'd considered. I was about 2 months into my role, I think, at the time when my manager approached me and said, do you want to have a look at this apprenticeship? And I was really happy to do it because I thought, like, this is something that I had always wanted to do. I just never really considered it seriously. And I thought if I did have to do it, I thought I would end up sort of paying for my degree and doing it that way alongside work and doing it part-time maybe. So yeah, I was really happy to get the opportunity to do it.
That's really good, isn't it? I mean, that's an important thing about the apprenticeship. It's about that employer recognising, and talent and using the apprenticeship as one of the vehicles to sort of upskill and retain talent. So, I mean, that's a brilliant vehicle for that. So just 2 months into the job and you start that. And how's it going for you?
I'm really enjoying it. So I'm just going into my second year now, actually. I start my second year next week. My first year went really well. I had a bit of a wobble at the start because I hadn't done as well as I'd expected to in my first assignment. But I think you've got to be really, especially when you don't have academic writing experience like I didn't, I think you've got to go a bit easier on yourself with stuff like that. So I sort of took the feedback from my first module, and I've been really happy with like how my assignments have gone since then. So yeah,
well, that's really important. You make a good point there. We'll probably touch on that a little bit later on. It's that academic support. You know, there's a lot of people. When I used to lead the Senior Leader Apprenticeship a long time ago now, but I was leading it when your cohort started in 2019, and often that first day induction, when you do an exercise called Hopes and Fears, which we do, one of the most sort of popular fear, if there is a popular fear, is, am I going to write? I haven't written anything for ages. And, you know, I always sort of reassure, if you can remember, I think my mantra of those days is those skills can be developed. Yeah. There's stacks of support in the university to help you structure an essay.
Yeah, there is.
The most important thing is about how you draw out and reflect on your professional practice and develop your skills whilst you're on there. Those technical skills will come. But you've done the right thing by taking the feedback from your first assignment and feeding it forward and improving. So
yeah, I went to see someone at the library actually, so they do have like workshops on and stuff, because I was quite embarrassed, to be fair. I was like, I actually work here and I've done like quite badly. I didn't fail, but I thought like, oh, I could have done a lot better than I did. Yeah. And all of my cohort was sort of saying what grades they got and stuff, and I was like, oh. But yeah, like I think there is plenty of support out there, and you shouldn't beat yourself up about one bad grade.
No, absolutely. Well, thanks, Niamh. So, Mark, what was your journey to the apprenticeship then?
Well, I sit with a wry smile just on what Niamh was saying there, because on my first assignment as well, I think I performed just about the same, which wasn't nowhere near where I expected. And I thought coming from 4 years of an undergrad straight into the Masters would have been the right thing to do in terms of keeping that continuity. But again, challenges around reference and changes and using a scholar over to Harvard. In particular, really, really welcome the support of the academic team and also the library as well, who took that time with me for a couple of hours and taught me. So yeah, took me back to my first couple of assignments in the university and the support I got. Much like Niamh really, so I'd finished my law degree and was wanting to do a postgraduate degree with the university anyway. And perhaps, quite timely really, my employer, who've always been keen in terms of developing leadership and skills amongst its leadership team at all levels, started the rollout of the Senior Management Apprenticeship. Obviously, one of the saving graces in respect of the apprenticeship levy on organisations, on large organisations, is the benefit that brings in terms of opportunities for development for its workforce as well. So I was fortunate enough to apply and be successful in joining quite a large cohort of senior managers from Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council onto the MBA through the Senior Management Apprenticeship route, and didn't look back from day one, Noel.
Yeah, well, I remember that day in induction. It was the majority of, well, it was not the majority, but there was a significant amount of senior leaders in your cohort, and that brought to it, I remember the rich discussion from day one there, because of course it was mixed, that cohort as well, with other people from the health service. We had people from engineering companies, a wide financial services, a wide range, and I think that's one of the things. The magic happens in that sort of space, doesn't it? So your employer, Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council, and I know that we still work closely with you. You are very good at sort of upskilling and again that whole retaining talent piece, and I think that's testament, in sort of your success as well so far. Long may it continue, Mark, with your career.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So if we look at how an apprenticeship works now, so Niamh, you're studying the CMDA now, the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship. How does it work? How do you learn? What happens?
So we have 1 to 2 days in the classroom every 2 weeks at the moment, obviously bar like bank holidays, like the Easter holidays, summer holidays, things like that. But I think one of the things that it's very much based around is actually having conversation within your cohort as well.
Okay.
So obviously, like you've mentioned, they came from your cohort's very diverse. It comes from a lot of different career backgrounds, public, private sector. So a lot of the learning's based around actually having conversations within the classroom. And the apprenticeship sort of makes sure that you're adopting certain attributes. So I think within the apprenticeship they call knowledge, skills and behaviours. So your knowledge is actually what you're demonstrating that you know. So you'll do that through assignments and different assessment methods such as like presentations and things like that. Your skills are being able to sort of act upon that knowledge and evidence it. So you'll have something called an off-the-job record, where you'll record different bits of training that you've done sort of within your job role as well, and different mentoring that you might have done that's demonstrating that you can apply that knowledge within your workplace. And then your behaviours are sort of more like your core values and your mindset. So are you thinking and behaving like a leader, and being able to demonstrate that as well.
And how does it work then? So obviously there's the modules that we have, so the academic content, and as you say, you know, it's very much a blended approach on both the Senior Leader Apprenticeship and the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship. By blended, it's mixed of in-class, online, sort of, and the support from the academic quality coaches. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how that works? Because you've got your modular support, your academic support, and then you've got the academic quality coach, haven't you? What role do they play in this?
Yeah, so your apprenticeship quality coach is there for sort of anything you need. If you've got any questions about your apprenticeship, if you've got any questions about being able to demonstrate your knowledge, skills and behaviours. But they also meet with you every few weeks with you and your line manager, just to sort of make sure everything's going okay, point you in the right direction. If you have any sort of academic concerns, like I did about my academic writing and stuff, they'll point you in the right direction of where you can get support and things like that. But also you've got your module leader as well who can help you with things like that when they're available. So there's a lot of support in place.
That's good. Mark, going back to your experience then, what was your learning experience like? How did you mould what you were doing in the classroom to fit your professional practice, your work within Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council?
Well, I think therein lies the benefit of that apprenticeship route, to be honest, Noel, because, you know, the academic learning, you know, was second to none and extremely important to me. But I also wanted the ability to apply what I was doing on a day-to-day basis back into what I was learning in the classroom into that context. And that was important to me given the fact that I was already in a leadership role at the time. So I was able then to apply what I was learning through the support of the quality coach into my day-to-day work and get credit for that as well.
Yeah.
I'm one that learns through doing. So, you know, that I recognise that pretty early on in my MBA, and in particular, the university helped me make sure that I was able to apply what I was learning in the classroom into the work context, and that's really how things sunk in for me. So that hybrid approach in that sense, both classroom-based and doing, having the opportunity to apply my learning into a live context where I could really test it out and really come back with some constructive feedback and learning and be able to bounce off some theoretical ideas with the academic team was vital for me in terms of my learning style.
And that's something that, again, is knitted into both the Senior Leader Apprenticeship and the Chartered Management Degree Apprenticeship, that experiential learning, the contextualisation of theory to your own practice, your own role, your organisation. I remember when I used to lead the Global Strategy Challenges and Choices module on the MBA, the Senior Leader Apprenticeship, the assessment for that was very much tailored to you pick a part of your organisation or your organisation and you do a full strategic analysis. So you're actually, many of the learners would actually do that for the purpose of the assessment, but also for the purpose of a project at work as well.
And that's absolutely right. And, you know, wearing two hats here today, Noel, both somebody who's been through this process and obviously came out the other side a much better leader, but also as an employer who has members of staff undergoing this process at the moment. Many organisations, certainly in the public sector in particular, are under quite a significant amount of pressure at the moment. So the benefit around this style of learning and that ability to apply it back into a work context means that we're able to problem solve some live fundamental issues that we have across the public sector at the moment, in the moment with upskilled staff working on those particular problems. We talk about, you know, global strategy, we talk about sustainability, environmental sustainability, and the UN sustainability principles was something that I took away and sticks in my mind and always will. but something I was able to apply then back into my day-to-day role to the benefit of the organisation and ultimately back to the benefit of the people that we serve in Stockton.
Yeah.
And I think there's not many ways of learning that would represent that value both to the employer and the employee who's undergoing that learning journey.
I mean, that's a really, really key point there, isn't it? That's a real benefit for employers, that actually your learners are not just going to learn for themselves, they're bringing that learning back into the organisation. Live, that's going to benefit the individual and the individuals within it, and hopefully take the organisation forward. You mentioned there the whole United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, sustainability. I mean, one of the things that we're proud of as a business school is being a signatory for the Principles for Responsible Management Education. And when I came back to Teesside after a spell away in 2017, I was tasked with writing the MBA as part of what was then the Senior Leader Master's Degree Apprenticeship. Yeah. And one of the things I was really passionate about was making sure that we embedded sustainability, the whole responsible leadership piece, the whole business and society piece within that course, and not have an MBA that looked like many MBAs that have 20 credits of project management, 20 credits of finance. It's very much an interdisciplinary piece. And I think it's fair to say back then, it was probably a little bit ahead of its time, but I was just reading an article recently in the Financial Times, just last week, where there was a call for sustainability to be embedded more into MBA programs rather than just being an afterthought or a bolt on. And interestingly, the words that we use, and they need to be more interdisciplinary in their nature. And I think one of the things about our Senior Leader Apprenticeship and the MBA that sort of sits with it is very interdisciplinary, because I think as a senior leader, you need to see how an organisation knits together. You need to have a holistic overview, yes, and and how business, be it private, public sector, whatever, of all shapes and sizes, they have to make a difference to society. We have to solve some of the world challenges that we've got. It can't just be governments doing that. And I think that's one of the key things that are coming out. So I'm glad that you said that resonated with you.
It did, if for those very reasons, and you articulated perfectly. But, in terms of applying that, we have some real gifted leaders within our organisation in particular, but within the wider public sector as well. But those gifted leaders tend to come from some vocational excellence, where they've worked their way up within the organisation, have the right attributes to do the role they do. Yeah. But one thing that I took away, and why that sticks with me, just to build on that, Noel, really is the fact that the MBA and the overarching apprenticeship that I took part in allowed me to step outside of that zone and look at things more collectively, looking at what the impacts of those sustainability goals are on our society, and how then that plays down to the communities of Stockton-on-Tees, because ultimately that's what I'm interested in, and that's the people I'm paid to serve. And it allowed just a different lens and some time out of the day-to-day as well, but left with me a huge, improvement in my opinion, in terms of being able to kind of knit all that together.
Brilliant. No, that's what it should do. Any course, any degree apprenticeship, has value for your employer, has value for you, but ultimately learners on it, when you're in that classroom environment and when you're doing your off-the-job work, you're reading something, you are reflecting on your professional practice as well. And that's so important. I think any professional has to be able to reflect and think, how might I do things better? Niamh, for you, is it what you feel? You're still on course, but what difference do you feel it's making to you as an individual, and perhaps how you're approaching your role so far? Is there any tangible things that you can point to at this moment in time?
I think, like you said, I've become definitely more reflective. I mean, before I started this apprenticeship, I didn't even really know what reflective practice was. I probably did it sometimes without even knowing that it was a thing. But just consciously going through that process, if I've ever sort of had an interaction with anybody, if I've ever sort of managed a project, just looking at things a bit differently and thinking, what did I do well? What can I do better next time? And I think because of that, you become a better leader, but also just better at your job role in general.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, we briefly touched on this earlier on, but I think it's useful to give it a little bit more airtime. So when you're on course, you're not just on course with people from your own organisation, unless you're in a closed cohort. And we do offer closed cohorts here as well as a package if requested. But you could be in a room with people from different disciplines, and I think for me that's where the magic happens. So Mark, do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience of your cohort and how you connected with other people from outside of a public sector background?
Absolutely, because I agree that's essentially where the magic happened for me as well. I've been extremely fortunate in that I've had quite a long and varied career within local government, and whilst I've moved across certain circles and across other organisations and learned within that context, one of my key drivers in terms of undertaking this apprenticeship, the Senior Management Apprenticeship in particular, was that ability to get a bit of a different perspective from those who were also on the course. I've been subsumed in public sector organisation all my career, and what I was keen to do was get a different perspective, both from other public sector organisations, but as you mentioned there, it was varied and had a lot of private sector organisations as well. And for me, that truly is where the magic did happen, because I was able to take some of my experiences and share that with a cohort, and also then listen to all that was going on over my 2 years with the university on the course and apply that back to my learning and subsequently my leadership style as well. None of us are perfect. We don't know everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that really provided me with some vital perspective. Academic learning aside, exceptional, second to none. That really is where I took a lot of my learning from, and being able to triangulate what I know from a public sector setting into a private sector, considerations as well, where, there's neither one better or worse, but together there was some really good learning that came out of that.
And as a tutor teaching in that space, the discussions that happen with people from different sectors, and often, you can find a solution to your business or leadership challenge from way outside of. So I was teaching once, and I remember there was someone from an agriculture background and someone from a medical background, and they were in this class, and they both had, the medical practitioner had this particular challenge, and they discussed it, and it was the person from the agriculture background that gave the solution to the medical challenge. So that's that. Again, it's about embracing that as part of the learning. It's brilliant what learning it takes place in the classroom, but it is that immersive experience that you have with your peers, where you can really, and it's great to get to understand and to know other industries as well, other sectors. Yeah. I think that's so important. Because I think it makes you a better practitioner if you've got breadth of knowledge as well, and you're not just, that there are other ways of doing things and achieving.
And it's a network that comes out of there as
Exactly.
well. I've made some lifelong friends from people within that course, and people up until this week I still touch base with problems and looking for some clarity or different perspectives on certain issues. And whether that's a huge private organisation that turns over £500 million a year, or that's a one-man band SME who's working to develop himself in order to grow business, there's benefit in both and working alongside in that blended approach in terms of the cohorts. It's also worth noting though, it also allowed me to work much closer with the colleagues on the course from my organisation. Ironically, we had a cohort of 6 people from Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council, people I work with on a day-to-day basis. But the idea flow and the quality of conversation and the different ideas that then came out that we were able to impart on the organisation for the better wouldn't have been possible without being taken out of the daily work-to-work context and put into a different environment. So it's also the benefit that comes from organisational development between colleagues, as well as that, cross-blend in terms of a wide, vast range of experiences.
So many benefits, isn't there? I'm hoping the listeners here listening to this now will be going, I can see that. Yeah. It's really good. Niamh, what about your cohort? What's the makeup of that?
Well, like you say, it's a lot of different sectors and a lot of different organisations. We've got like NHS, PD Ports, student loans, obviously the local authorities as well. But what I always find really sort of fascinating about it is the sort of different levels at which we see individuals coming from as well. So we've got some people who've done the A levels and joined graduate schemes. We've got people who are like me, who've had an apprenticeship background and haven't done the degree yet. We've got people who are slightly further on in their careers, so they are actually managers, but they've still not done their degree yet either, so they're wanting to get a bit of that experience. And then there's also people who have done a degree before but have ended up in a completely different job role, and they're now wanting to come back and do something a little bit more related and manage people. So I always find that quite interesting, and it's good to know from people who are further on in their careers who can also help me as well. But I also think there's a difference in like generational knowledge as well. So they'll learn something from us about sort of the workforce that are coming through as well.
Absolutely. No. And I think you've talked about the support on the course for the learning. So you've both been really complimentary about the academic support and the apprenticeship quality coaches. What about the support within the workplace? Because you've got a mentor, I presume. Yeah. So how does that role work?
So yeah, I have a mentor and my line manager, but also like colleagues within my team. I've mentioned that a lot of my counterparts have already done degrees and stuff as well. So especially where I've needed help with academic writing, referencing, how the style that I should be writing in, I think I've sought a lot of help from people within my team as well. But I think as well having mentoring sessions. I mean, I think it's a requirement of the apprenticeship anyway that you get 6 hours a week off the job time. Yeah. But I think it's sort of embedded within that as well that you have a mentor within your team, and they sort of show you the ropes with things like that. So I found that really brilliant.
Yeah, how do you find that support on the course?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said there. In particular, my mentor was essentially my champion within the organisation, because understandably, embarking on this journey in terms of the learning comes with a load of benefits for the organisation at the end, but it does take a lot of sacrifice in terms of time and focus and attention as you go through that. So I took real benefit from my mentor supporting me, but also advocating for me as well within that employer setting.
Okay.
You know, they weren't there really, or they were there as a shoulder and somebody I can use as a soundboard, but in particular they were there to safeguard me and to make sure that I had the appropriate space to apply myself on the course to get the most out of that for the employer. And that's where I took real benefit from, and that's the role that hopefully I take now for those who are undergoing the course.
No, that's really important. Yeah, that's really important. I guess people might be sat listening now thinking, well, how much time does this take up on a weekly basis? That's a question that I get asked quite a lot. So, Niamh, how do you work your work around the off-the-job, the studying? How do you manage to fit it all in?
Well, I think obviously you've got your 6 hours a week off the job, which can include your self-study time. It might include like mentoring sessions, things that tick off your knowledge and skills and behaviours, but also embed themselves within your actual job role anyway. So things that you'll probably be doing anyway, but they are also developing you, and you're just spending that little bit more time on them and evidencing it as well. Mm-hmm. So I think there's that. In terms of assignment time, I think I'm one of them people that's very motivated by pressure. So there is a little bit of like, I need to get this done. And I will spend time, like a lot of time after work and stuff, doing it. And I think it's just sort of having a lot of self-discipline as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, everyone learns at a different pace and does it differently. So you sound like you've got quite a regimented structure to it. How did you do it, Mark?
Yeah, my toxic trait's been pressure prompted as well, unfortunately, for better or for worse. I think, you know, we mentioned it previously, but again, just to go over that. By default, the way the course is structured and the way the apprenticeship is in particular, you are able to meet a lot of the requirements through the usual function of what you do on a day-to-day basis. There is a time sacrifice, you know, so a day a week we worked on projects relating to the MBA, but a benefit to the employer as well. We talked about those big programs, those big projects of change that we're able to influence and steer within the organisation. So whilst it's time and weight, it is still time and benefit. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say to viewers that there isn't a time sacrifice. There absolutely is. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth the achievement come the end of it. Yeah. But I certainly, given the fact that I'm a family man, I've got 2 small ones at home, I've got a full-time role that often requires a lot of me, and I also give a lot of time volunteering back into the community as well. I was still able to fit my learning in and still come out of the process with a really good outcome and a whole host of benefit to me as an employee of the organisation. So whilst difficult and sometimes challenging at times, it moves in peaks and troughs, and there's tons and tons of support there to make sure you get through that in a real controlled, regimented way.
Yeah, and the key there is that you're the apprenticeship, you're applying what you're learning
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and your assessments and achieving academic success, but also solving an issue in the organisation as well. I think that's key there, isn't it? So you're actually you're doing two things.
Yeah.
And go on.
You're writing about your own experiences as well a lot of the time. So, like you say, it is very reflective, and it is just sort of following your own thought process about maybe about a situation or a project that you've done. So a lot of the time it is just that. So I would actually, this might not be the case, I would actually say that you benefit from working alongside it anyway.
Yes.
Because you can relate that stuff back to your own thought processes that you've had during the day anyway, during your normal working day. I wouldn't say it's unachievable.
So I guess before we wrap this up then, we probably touched on it a bit throughout, but Mark, you're now at the other side of the fence. You're the employer side of it. So what do you think the benefits are to businesses of putting staff through degree apprenticeships?
I think the benefits are vast, and I think we've aired some of these out already, Noel, but just to kind of summarise those back as we kind of conclude this, there's the academic benefits to the employee, is the investment in the employee in terms of their development, and ultimately what they then give back to the organisation in terms of their function. The biggest benefit for me, though, and again I will stand by this because this is my experience, it's the benefit of perspective of learning outside of the organisation. We do a lot of things internally at Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council where we look to develop our workforce with internal courses or with coaching, internal mentorship. And that's excellent, and people take a lot of benefit from that. But there is true worth in being able to take employees out of the work setting and put them into a blended mix of different vocations and different backgrounds of other learners, and teach some of the academic stuff within that context, because it's not so much the stuff that they primarily get taught on the academic footing, which is important, but it's the secondary benefits of taking on all those lessons and examples out of their natural context and setting. Sure. And that's really what benefits me as an employer for my employees going through at that moment. I'll hasten to add, nobody's been through this process and come back a worse employee.
That's brilliant to hear. I'm few. Yeah, absolutely. Superb. Neve, so summarise then, what do you feel that the benefits are going to be for you going forward by doing the Chartered Manager Degree Apprenticeship?
I think the biggest benefit for me so far is being able to understand myself and also my colleagues a bit better.
Yeah.
So I think you learn a lot about like what your personality type is, how you react to certain situations, and you can also relate that to your colleagues as well. And I think that prevents a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication within the workplace. And I work in quite a big team, and we do a lot of team exercises quite often. So being able to understand your team in that way makes you a better leader, I think. And I've also sort of learned you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, and one day I hope that will be the case, but for now I think it's just sort of leading by example and acting like one if you're not one, but not being too bossy.
Love it. No, it's brilliant. So last question from me then. Plans for the future, Dr. Stevenson, do we think?
Maybe. I need some time off first, Noel. I'll be honest with you.
Well, I think give you a year off. Maybe.
Yeah, but I alluded to this at the start of this discussion. This is the first year in 10 that I've not been a student at the university, and not just because of the context we're in. I'll say what I wish, but I've genuinely missed it. I've missed being part of this institution and missed learning and developing. So this is most certainly not the end of my learning journey. I'm really keen to make sure that any future learning benefits my employer and ultimately benefits in terms of the role I do back into the community. But I certainly wouldn't say no.
Well, that's really interesting because we have got some plans to speaking seriously to that agenda for doctoral study. We've just launched a Doctor of Professional Practice in business transformation, which actually involves leading a transformational change as part of the doctorate. So
seems almost perfect, doesn't it?
Anyone would think we just planned this. Yeah, but no, there are opportunities, and it's good to see you've still got an appetite and thirst for learning as well, because it's all about lifelong learning, isn't it? So, well, we wish you all the best for the future, Mark. Neve, what's next for you?
Well, I'm obviously still on course. I don't graduate until 2026. So I'm hoping, I would like to stay here. Lucky for you, Noel.
Well, I would love you to stay here.
So I would like to stay, and I'd like to progress within my team, hopefully during my studies, if not afterwards, and then, see where I end up.
Well, I wish you both the very best with everything you're doing. Thank you so much for your time today. You've been brilliant guests, brilliant to talk to. So thank you very much, Mark Stevenson and Niamh Cooney. Thank you very much for you, the listeners, for listening to the Master of Business podcast. We will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.